Well, James, you've written a piece that's on ESPN.com right now about the Premier League's attempts to sign, or the club, sorry, to sign top strikers in the summer. There was an awful lot of strikers that moved. Isak was one, Gyokeres another, Sesko another one. It was meant to be a summer where these top strikers came in and made a massive impact. It's not been quite like that.
No, I mean it was billed as the summer of strikers, at least in my head, and it's just not worked out that way. I mean, it's only just it's the beginning of December, so I mean we could be fools come March with what we're about to say here, but you have to look at it and think that I think with Isak and Gyokeres in particular, those were two forwards acquired at great expense to come in, and they were win now signings. Yeah. They were obviously Liverpool had already won the league, but I think everybody, and I was certainly guilty of this. I looked at that Liverpool squad and thought, if they're going to add someone like Isak,
me too.
2 + 2 equals title. That's we shouldn't really simplify things to that extent, but it did feel as though, on top of all the other business they'd done as well, that he was the icing on the cake. And of course, it's only been this weekend where he scored his first Premier League goal, and he's had injury problems, which I know that some of the other clubs that were looking at him were a little bit wary about his injury record, and Newcastle had obviously established a rhythm with him. But could he go and deliver 3 times a week for 9 months across the course of a season? Would his body hold up to that? I think that's still a question mark. And obviously there's a sort of wider malaise at Liverpool, which isn't, you can't lay that squarely at Isak exclusively. Obviously Florian Wirtz hasn't hit the ground running. We all know, obviously, the Diogo Jota tragedy and all the change that's taken place at the club, and Arne Slot's difficulties in finding the right team. It's not just down to Isak, but the point is, when you spend £125 million on one player, there is no margin for error. He has to come in and he has to deliver and he has to improve you as a team. And the fact is, at the moment, that Isak hasn't done that.
Well, let's talk about Gyokeres, another striker who moved in the summer. We've mentioned that you were at Stamford Bridge on Sunday. I know Gyokeres is just coming back from injury, but Arsenal played against 10 men for an awful long time, and Gyokeres got 18 minutes, I think, off the bench.
Yeah.
Were you surprised that his introduction was so late? Is it simply because he's just come back from injury, or is it more telling of where he is in Arsenal's pecking order?
Well, he's not fully fit.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say, and it's his first appearance back. It would have been a gamble to throw him in, especially when you consider the rhythm that the team's playing with at the moment. And I have to say, Mikel Merino, I think, has exceeded all expectations in that centre forward role. It felt like a sticking plaster last season, but the intelligence he plays with in that position and what he actually gives them, not just in his link-up play, but also off the ball, being able to drop in. And they sort of played with 2 false nines against Spurs with Eberechi Eze alongside him. That kind of tactical versatility is a long way away from where Arsenal were sort of in pre-season, where behind the scenes of the conversations that I had, they were talking about how they were going to have to be more direct. They were going to need to change their style and play to Gyokeres' strengths. And I think, look, Arsenal obviously top of the league and they look the best team in the division, but where their struggles have been in an attacking sense have been, I think, in trying to make that switch to get the best out of Gyokeres. And it probably isn't a coincidence that when he's dropped out of the team, they've reverted a little bit more to how they played last season. Yeah. They look a little bit more fluid. Marino's able to somehow link it in a way that you're getting more out of the attacking players around him. And they've not, therefore, then made those strides towards getting the best out of Gyokeres. I mean, it might be a bit harsh to include him on this list. I mean, he has scored 6 goals so far, but you break it down. Those goals came against Leeds, Nottingham Forest, and Burnley in the Premier League. So, and in the big games, I wouldn't say he's looked lost, but he's looked short of the level. And again, Arsenal looked at Gyokeres, they looked at Benjamin Sesko, and we'll talk about him in a minute. One of the main reasons they went for Gyokeres is because he was a goal a game over 3 seasons in Sporting Lisbon. He's 27, quite a few years older than Sesko, and they thought this guy can come in. He knows the English game, having played obviously in the Championship. He can come in, hit the ground running. Yes, there'll be a period of adaptation in terms of how we get the best out of him, but he is the main man. He is our number 9. He can go and win us the league. And at the moment, they look like winning the league without him.
Yeah.
And that is, again, quite a marked change from the summer. Now, obviously, Sesko is further back in his development. He's a much younger player. tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a little bit of surprise that United shelled out for him when they did in the summer, given what they needed elsewhere. I mean, he's looked quite short of confidence from what I've seen when he's played. I mean, what have you made of him? Is he behind schedule like the others seem to be?
Perhaps a little bit. I mean, I think it's such a tough ask to move to the Premier League at that age. He's only 22. Obviously got a lot of experience in Germany. Leading the line for Man United is an unenviable task. It's the spotlight on how productive you are and how you're playing is intense, and it's not for the faint-hearted. There's also this kind of debate among United fans: did they just replace one Højlund with another kid who came in for a big fee who never seemed to be particularly comfortable? Was he developed enough to be able to be that 20-goal-a-season striker? Obviously now he's at Napoli on loan, and they've replaced him essentially with Sesko, a guy with of a similar age and similar kind of stats. United will tell you that Benjamin Sesko offers an awful lot more than Højlund, even though I think Sesko scored 2 Premier League goals. I think he's obviously injured at the moment, but United will tell you that the data and the kind of the things that they see in their analysis will tell you that he's a far better player than Højlund. That his movement is better, he runs the channels better, he holds the ball up better. He gets United higher up the pitch in a way that Højlund struggled to. So even though he's not scoring a ton of goals, which he's not, that United are better with Sesko in the team than they are with Højlund. I think the Sesko signing in general is quite interesting because it shows what United and Ruben Amorim are facing at the moment. We sat with Ruben on Friday before the Palace game, and he started talking about short-term and long-term. He is leading a long-term project at United. Everyone can probably see that from watching games and the development of the squad. But he also knows that he needs to win now. Now, they've brought in Mbeumo and Cunha, who are adapted to the Premier League of the right age profile. You assume that they can come in and make a difference straight away. Sesko is different in that you're probably banking on him having quite a slow start because he's so young and developing into the player that you want him to be. Ruben Amorim, behind closed doors, may argue that, well, I don't have that time. I don't have time for Sesko, Dorgu, Yoro and Lamens, 4 players who he relies on really heavily to get to that point when they're 26, 27 to be the finished article. So it's this balance. And there was a suggestion during the summer that Ruben Amorim would have liked a more ready-made striker, an Ollie Watkins type, who's already scored 20 goals in the Premier League before, could come in and have the similar impact to Mbeumo and Cunha. Instead, he's left with Sesko, who is going to take time. Again, it's difficult for Amorim because he is under no illusions that he cannot afford not to win games now. But there's no suggestion from United that they think that Sesko is ready-made in a way that maybe Gyokeres or Isak is. I also think that part of the problem, I'm going to ask you this in relation to Isak and Gyokeres in particular, is that all of these strikers, and you mentioned there that Gyokeres has actually done all right, goal-scoring wise, he scored 6.
Okay.
When it's measured against Erling Haaland, which is obviously the benchmark for any striker, it doesn't look that great. And now I think that is a problem for Premier League strikers, because if you're not catching or around Haaland's numbers, you're deemed as sort of second rate. And that's obviously not true, because Haaland is, in terms of numbers, is a freak. It can be, I imagine that's quite tough for someone like Gyokeres and even Isak moving to Liverpool. If he scores 10 Premier League goals this season, everyone's going to say that's a failure.
Yeah, well, I mean, Haaland probably does ruin it for everyone else. You're right, in terms of just his ridiculous consistency and his numbers, and maybe the way that the league's gone as well now, that it does, because a consequence of it being more direct and and perhaps more reliant on set pieces, dead ball situations, that you are looking to your big number 9 to have more of an impact in the final third and to score those goals, whereas maybe if you're playing more football, they're shared around a bit more. I mean, look, I think from Isak's point of view, I think the price tag alone is the pressure, let alone comparing him to Haaland. I mean, I suppose there is maybe the argument that because Liverpool are champions, it's actually Haaland has got it to prove, and City have got it to prove in that regard, and that's probably how Isak should look at it. The pressure on him will come from that price tag, and to say that the sort of longer the slow start takes place, the more there's a focus on the goals, and you sort of see it with Arteta and Gyokeres that he goes down that familiar managerial trope of, oh yeah, but it's not about goals. It's about what he brings to the team, and it's about his aura and about his presence and what. And you're like, well, yeah, but you can't really spend the whole of the back end of last season and the summer talking about how we need this big number 9 and we're going to go and sign a striker and we've got our man. And then when he comes in and he doesn't score, we were talking about everything else, and actually the goals aren't that important. So I suppose what's helped Gyokeres in his case, of course, is the team's 5 points clear at the top of the table. So it hasn't really mattered yet. The question is whether, when it comes to March, April time, and there's still a handful of points in it, and the big chances are falling to him, and he's showing the same kind of inconsistency that he is now. Well, that's a different kettle of fish.